Hello there, my name's Sean Hewitt. This is my colleague Sid Smith. We're in the second issue of the definitive Bob Dylan vinyl collection. And I think it's fair to say we're enjoying ourselves. Hope you're enjoying yourselves too. We're a bit disappointed with the quality of the magazine with this. So we're providing our own sidebar broadcast where we talk through the album. Sid is the skeptic and I'm the connoisseur. And sorry?
No.
Oh, don't interrupt me. And anyway, this is Bob's second album. This is the make or break album, the album that made him. Because the first album, which is just called Bob Dylan, was released before this one, obviously, and it only contained 2 of his songs. But that's not the most important thing. The most important thing is it only sold about 5,000 copies anywhere in the world. And so there was some pressure at Columbia to drop him from the label. And another faction led by John Hammond, the legendary A&R man who'd signed him and who produced these records, was desperate for him to stay on the label. So they spent a long time recording this. None of the sessions are particularly elaborate in themselves, but they were spread over about a year. And also they finished the album and then withdrew it. The first version had 4 different tracks on it that they withdrew and then recorded 4 more because he was writing so many songs and they wanted the record to reflect his latest compositions. Now, there are some copies of that first edition with the 4 different tracks. And if you've got one of them, you never need to work again. But this...
Funnily enough, Sean...
well, no. Yeah, neither have I. I've got 3 copies of this. But this is the vinyl. This is the mono box set, and this is my old Nice Price. Remember them? Yeah. Nice Price CD. This is the album that starts with "Blowing in the Wind," which has got to be one of the most famous songs Dylan or anyone ever wrote.
Let me stop you there. Let me interrupt you there, Sean. Am I right in thinking that you've just shown us the 3 copies there? Am I right in thinking that you've got a vinyl copy, yes, which is what we're talking about? But would I be right in thinking that you don't actually have a turntable?
Well, that's the point I wish you'd not raised, but you did have to bring it up, Sid. I haven't got one at the present time, but I'm assured I am going to get one. Due to the powers of space and time. So very soon I'll be able to hear these quiet, good quality pressings you keep raving to me about on the phone with my own ears on my own turntable. But at the moment, I'm having to listen to these on the world of these music cassettes that I've got of these albums.
I do remember a conversation some time ago where you were saying that basically vinyl albums were bloody useless because they sounded crap and all the rest of it. But you're now thinking about getting a turntable, I understand.
Well, one of the things about this is, I mean, the quality of the magazine is so poor. I mean, let's face it, if this was a magazine, you wouldn't buy it, would you? It's a good job an LP comes with it. And this LP, you keep telling me, well, it's a lovely listen, it's a really good pressing. And as we're doing the LP series, it's perhaps right that I listen again to the world of LPs. I'm not convinced it'll be as good as the CDs I've got, to be honest, but it'll be an interesting experience, and it'll be interesting to listen to the albums in detail for this project.
Yes, so, but I think if you subscribe to this series, Dylan Vinyl, the definitive collection, I think if you subscribe to it, they send you a turntable. Is that what you're doing?
No. If you pay £2 a month extra for your subscription, or £2 an issue, around about issue 40 in about 2.5 years' time, you get a turntable while stocks last. So I think if I'm going to wait that long and pay £2 or £4 a month, whatever it is, I just want to just get one. You know?
Of course, what they should do is, like with Part magazines, Part Works, there's a couple out at the moment. This will mean nothing to anybody watching this in America, but
or indeed Great Britain.
There's a trucking company in the UK called Eddie Stobbard, and there is a.
They look really good.
There is a artwork magazine that you can buy, and over a period of 40 weeks or whatever, you get to be able to build an Eddie Stobber. And I think if only there was some way that could combine the two worlds.
To build a turntable.
So well, no, we get a model of Bob Dylan driving an Eddie Stobbart truck. I mean,
yes, over 41 issues. It could be 80 feet high. It could be higher than your house.
And it would go some way to solving some of the haulage issues that the country is currently experiencing, the vast shortage of long haul drivers. I'm just saying.
I only wish you were in government.
I only wish.
If you could have a government funded build your own lorry program, and the people have to pay 16 quid an issue.
Yeah,
the country would be back on its feet in no time.
And I'll tell you what, the magazine that comes with it would be better than this one.
It would be.
We're slagging the magazine off. It's worth saying that if that's what purports to be the magazine.
Yeah, I mean that's what you don't want to see, isn't it? Because you've already got this. You've got all that. I mean, there's a massive picture of the front and the back of the album, and a picture of the LP. I mean, what's the point of that? It's not exactly new information if you've got this bit, is it? I mean,
right. Okay.
I mean, here you go. Here's your LP, and here's a massive picture of it. Yeah, thanks. That was worth the money. So anyway, here we are to fill that gap.
Yes. So I have to say, I one of the ongoing things about this this series that we've agreed to do for the time being, anyway, is that I've although I'm aware of the songs, many of the songs on these albums, you know, I don't have them, and so this, for example, I think it's the first copy of this that I've ever owned. And it's the first time yesterday, this was the first time that I listened to the album, like in order and in sequence.
Yes.
So, and I have to, joking aside, although I've got nothing to compare it to, again, like the other one, it sounds really good. You know, I put the needle down on it, and it sounds right there, right in the room. It's a great recording. Yeah. These things are really well recorded, which will come as no surprise to anybody who knows the material. But for somebody like me, you know, it's been fascinating listening to how these things are put together.
Just seeing you hold the album there like that, that's a spectacular cover, isn't it?
I gotta say, this cover. So my first experience with this cover, this is absolutely true. I was a very young kid. What year did this come out? Was it 64? 63.
This was 1963.
Right. So
his first album came out in 62. This came out in 63.
So I don't know how long it had been up on the wall. So, you know, I mean, I was a small child holding my mum's hand kind of thing. So I would have been 63. I would have been 5 years old probably. And I grew up in a town called Wallsend, and there was a shop called Tompkins and Stubbs, which was on the high street. And Tompkins and Stubbs were an electrical repair shop. You know, you went there to buy an iron to iron your clothes, or you went there to buy a Hoover, or you know, other anything electrical. And the other thing that was in their shop on the one side of the wall was a bunch of LP covers, because they sold records. That's where you got your records from. It wasn't like you know, some trendy record shop or anything. It was just like, that's where you got your records from. Anyway, I can say this absolutely. So the first time I don't know if it was 1963, did you say?
63.
Yeah. So I don't know if I saw this in 1963, but it was up on the wall and I was young. So I'm guessing it might have been the year after, possibly. I don't know. But there was something about this photograph which had some kind of resonance for me. And a bit later on, nobody in our family had a Bob Dylan LP. I've got 2 older sisters, both of whom were into music. They didn't have any Bob Dylan LPs. It was the Beatles generally. But I came across this album cover again a little when I was quite a bit older, and you know, it's such a great photograph. Everything in that photograph just works so well. You know, I love the coldness in the photograph, the fact that they're huddled up together, and it's the kind of, you look at it and you think, like as a young kid, you know, like you look at it and think, that's what I want, you know. I want
Yeah.
that, you know, I absolutely want that. And obviously I didn't know where it was taken, you know. I mean, I know where it was taken now, obviously, but at the time, when I was even that bit older, I didn't realize that this was a New York skyline. But man, what a great photograph. I just love the immediacy of it. And it reminds me of, I can't remember the name of the photographer now. There's another photographer, an American photographer, who takes photo, you know, has couples in sort of naturalistic poses, and it's got that, a bit of that sort of energy. Sees the day. It's the bit of humor in it as well, I think. But and they just look so cool, man. You know,
They do, don't they?
They're cool, you know. But I remember once I interviewed an artist who shall remain nameless, and he did an album which had his girlfriend on the front cover. And when I asked him, I did an interview many years after it was released. I did an interview with him, and he said to me, he said, "Word of advice," he says, never have your girlfriend on the front cover, because at some point, sooner or later, she's going to be your ex-girlfriend, and your current girlfriend or wife will not like that album because of that. Now, that might seem a bit mean, might seem a bit, but yeah. And also in the magazine that we don't like, again, I don't know why they do this. There's a kind of another version, you know, there's from the same sheet. Yeah. But and it's gorgeous. I mean, I love that one sort of even more. Is it the same photograph just cropped? It's the same photograph just cropped.
It looks like you to me, yeah.
It is, yeah, it is. It is the same photograph just cropped in. But they've stuck that bloody awful box down there with some details about the photograph. But man, absolutely great. And to be honest, the album, the contents of the album, you know, couldn't possibly live up to that photograph for me. But I was interested to give it a try. But there we are.
Well, there's a doom-laden note on which to finish your
so yeah,
fantastic eulogy to the front cover. Well, this is the album that made him. There's 13 tracks, 11 of them are written by him, which is, you know, quite the opposite of the first album. Blown in the Wind, the first track on it, is one of the most famous songs that he or anyone else has ever recorded in this era. And it's one of those songs, you're so used to hearing the song. I don't know if you can't hear it with fresh ears. You understand what I mean? It's like when I read Revolution in the Head by Ian MacDonald, it's like, yeah, this defamiliarizes them, so I can listen to I can hear the music again. And perhaps I need a book that does that for that. Girl from the North Country is Martin Carthy taught him that tune, and he's written a fantastic lyric which is about a girl he's left behind, as always there. This is obviously about Suze again, who we're in trouble with Suze now at this point even, and there's been several candidates put forward for who that girl is. Girl's back in his hometown, I think, but it probably is Suze Rotolo. Masters of War, one of his best protest songs ever. You know, a really influential song. I mean, often covered. I mean, there's a song in 1989, Elvis Costello's album Spike. He writes a song about Margaret Thatcher called "Tramp the Dirt Down," yeah. And it's so obviously trying to evoke the song and failing. I think this song is far more powerful. Down the Highway and Bob Dylan's Blues. We'll come back to these at the end. And A Hard Rains Are Gonna Fall, which at this album's release, I know you, is that a Quiet Sun t-shirt you're wearing there?
Yes, yes.
There's a tangential connection here because, of course, A Hard Rain's Gonna Fall, which was regarded as an astonishing record when it came out because of the lyric, which seems to, at the time, was, presumed to be a comment on the Cuban Missile Crisis. But he says it's far more fundamental than that. It's not just the immediate threat of, it's the annihilation that Dylan, throughout his work, thinks is inevitably going to come to the world, and that's what that song is about.
It's one of,
but I think that's one of the most amazing songs he ever wrote, and of course that's been reframed a lot in subsequent years, hasn't it? That song.
Yeah, well, I think it's brilliant that Bob Dylan, was able to cover a Brian Ferry song, and add in a couple of extra verses, which Brian Ferry very cleverly left out, thus shortening the song. Because I think that's the other thing about Bob Dylan, is yes, it's the end of the world. Yes, there's this existential threat. Yes, they're living under the shadow of the Cold War. But man, do you have to go on for so long about it? Just keep it short, keep it neat, make it happy a bit more. And I think the Brian Ferry version does that. When I listened to the Brian Ferry version, I got no sense of the apocalypse, the impending apocalypse.
That's the thing, isn't it? Yeah,
that's what you want from a singer-songwriter, isn't it? You don't want to be reminded of your own mortality and the fragility of the thread by which we all hang. You want.
If you don't want to know those things, you're listening to the wrong guy. That's bread and butter for Bob. I mean, that's why he's a bit different from your Brian Ferrys and your Alvin Stardusts.
No wonder Sue's left him. If he'd got a bit more, if he'd got a bit more chipper, she might have stayed with him.
Yeah, well, I'm sure you're right, but what other records have been like? Well, probably like some of the records in the 80s, probably. But anyway, I think this is a masterpiece up until the beginning of side 2. We Don't Think Twice, It's All Right is a tremendous song. I mean, that's another classic. And I understand you've got some feelings. He's a bit of a arsehole on that song, but
I have a bit because I know very, as is obvious in the series of these discussions that we're having.
Yeah,
I know
like your Vic and Bob Brian Ferry bit there.
I know almost nothing about the intricacies of Bob Dylan's world, but the one thing I do know is that Suze Rotolo, went off and went off to Italy and did her own thing. When you listen to Don't Think Twice, it's like he's saying, kind of, I'm leaving you, and that's not right, is it? He's not exactly honest there, is he?
But this is not meant to be a romantic song. He's definitely trying. This is why he's a great lyricist. And I think it's fair to call him, a lyricist rather than a poet in many ways, because these words are intended to be heard in songs, and that's how you must approach them. It's a tremendous song because he's obviously, even in that song, tremendously hurt by Suze Rotolo, and he's trying to cover it up. And he's written a lyric in which a man is genuinely hurt and trying to put on this front, pretending he's not. Yeah, that's what he's doing in this song. I mean, if you think he's being cruel in this song, then there's some other songs coming up later where he is genuinely cruel that will leave this in the shade. But he is trying to pretend it's his decision. He's trying to pretend that he's not hurt in this song. Yeah. And that kind of tension between what's happened and what he's pretending has happened is the brilliance of the words.
Right.
I think that is.
Right.
And he's trying to hide it in a lyric that actually tells you I'm devastated. And this is why he gets the big money for writing the words.
So he's saying that yeah, I'm sorry, babe, I've got to leave you, and but in fact it's she who's left him. That's the thing.
Well, he's saying to her, the message in the repeated refrain of the song is she's saying it's over, and he's saying, "Well, don't think twice, it's all right." But it's not all right. He doesn't think it's all right. You see the other songs he's written around this song, but of course, in life, in these kind of situations, the kind of emotions that are dredged up by an event in your life like this aren't predictable. They're more complex than, "Oh, darling, please come back," aren't they? He's angry. He's humiliated. He's embarrassed by how strongly he feels for her, and he's really hurt as well. And he's trying to convey some of that. Later on, the song, for example, the song in which this broadcast is named after, "Idiot Wind," then you'll see some harsh words about an ex-partner, his former wife, Sarah. The chorus goes, "You're an idiot, babe. It's a wonder that you still know how to breathe." And this is nothing like that. I mean, and there's other songs coming up about not just girlfriends, but their sisters. He gets really angry about, and I'm not trying to say he's in any way blameless. I mean, I've just been reading a book about the author Philip Roth, and the tangled love lives there are just mind-boggling. Bob's not on that level, but he's not far off. And he's a young man, 20, 21, 22.
Yeah.
He's suddenly, from this album onwards, everybody knows who he is in the world of a certain age, and he's getting a lot of attention, and he's already been successful with women from when he was at school. Now that goes off the scale, he's not a wallflower when it comes to the opposite sex. But I know, and there's some of the behaviour that's later on absolutely reprehensible, but there's no doubt at all he was shattered by the end of this relationship, like he was shattered by the end of the relationship with Sarah later on.
Of course, we were talking when we last did this with the other album. We both picked Boots of Spanish Leather, which is another Suze Rotolo inspired song.
Yes. Yes.
And that seems to be a more kind of genuine, heartfelt.
As I said before, North Country Girl. Not here. Girl for the North Country. That's most probably about Suze Rotolo as well.
Yeah. I mean, I'm working through the album as I did for the first time last night. Again, I was surprised by just how well, I shouldn't have been surprised, but just how much of it I actually knew, without ever consciously listening to this stuff, and it just gives you an indication, a reminder of the all-pervasive kind of way that Dylan is everywhere, and almost in everything. I've got in the office here, I've got the inner gatefold of Soft Machine 3 up on the wall in a frame. I can't show you because it's too hard to lift the computer up. But and it's for those who don't know it features the Soft Machine lineup at the time, sort of sitting around looking a bit knackered, a bit tired after a gig, in an apartment in West Germany, and in amongst it all, there's some groovy op art posters on the wall, and of course there's a picture of Bob Dylan up on the wall, and it's just that he's like everywhere. And an album like this, as I say, when I was a little kid, I can remember seeing this when I was a little kid in 1963 or 1964, maybe 1965. I don't know. I can't remember now. But and it's the same for the songs. The songs, I've never heard these songs before. Oh, wait a minute, I have.
Yes.
They're just everywhere, and everybody's covered them, or in some shape or form. And in that sense, it's quite hard. It's quite interesting to listen to it, consciously listen to it for the first time, and hear it as a sequence of songs that people would be encountering for the first time. And I have to say that that one of the things that sort of slightly wrong-footed me with it was sometimes the vocals are kind of, they're almost like comedy voices almost, you know, you can, you know, like really exaggerated, you know, kind of vocalese going on. And so I wasn't prepared for that. I thought it was all going to be like really earnest and, you know, kind of, you know, but a lot of it's not, which surprised me. I've not been fully aware of that. I think because we've listened to this out of sequence, the album that we listened to a couple of weeks ago, that one comes after this, doesn't it?
Yeah, this is the second album. That was the third.
Yeah. So that's interesting, just to hear.
And the next issue is, of course, the first.
It makes no sense.
As you put the comedy voice thing, there's a series of tracks on this album. Bob Dylan's Blues, Bob Dylan's Dream, and the closing, which are the best of those tracks, I Shall Be Free.
Yes.
When he recommends, you know, let's have Sophia Loren and Anita Ekberg, and they'll solve the nation's problems. He did this kind of thing. He did it in concerts. He did it here. Sometimes they're written, sometimes they're half extemporized. He's trying to be funny. And he is, to me, it sounds a bit dated now. They're not my favourite go-to tracks by Bob Dylan. But his sense of humour is something that's too often overlooked, because he is very funny. And as he goes on through his career, we'll see the humour more and more. In unexpected places as well.
What's the one track that you go to on this LP?
Well, it's going to be one of two.
No, it's one.
Yeah, I'll pick one.
It can't be one or two. It's got to be one.
I'm going to pick one. All right. Masters of War, which is based on an old folk song, Nottingham Town.
Yes. Yeah.
Which is about Nottingham, where I live. That's always been a favourite of mine, and so I've got an emotional attachment to it. But really, it's overwhelmed in my affection by A Hard Rain's Gonna Fall, because I think that's tremendously ambitious. He seemed to write it very quickly. It's got an enormous number of verses, as you've rightfully pointed out, but they're full of incredible images, and it's a really unique way of writing a song. There was nobody writing words like that in pop music at this stage, and the incredible concentrated imagery of those lines. It's been one of the, you say he's everywhere. One of the reasons he's everywhere is everyone starts to try to write words like him.
Yeah.
With varying degrees of success, it must be said. Yeah. And I just think that's the best song on the album. I think, and I think there's probably 5 or 6 songs are classics on this album, which is not bad going. I do think there's 3 comedy numbers, if you like. There's a couple of cover versions. I think the album fizzles out before the end because of them. I think there's a very strong sequence on side 1. And I think after Don't Think Twice, It's All Right, between that and I Shall Be Free, I don't think it's anything like as interesting.
No.
But it's not boring. It's all very pleasant. I'm just saying it's not as strong as your first side and the beginning of your second side, which are crammed with absolute classics, So
okay,
I'll say Hard Rain's Gonna Fall. Which is yours?
Well, despite what I was saying earlier on about Hard Rain Gonna Fall going on a bit, part of me I largely agree. with that, about how good that song is, and it is a good song. I can't deny that, even though I am a bit of a Dylan skeptic, and I do think it does go on a bit too long. The Brian Ferry version, as I say, omits a couple of verses, and I think it benefits from it. But
wounding the song irreparably.
The song. Actually, there is a bit of a naff bit in the Brian Ferry version, which we'll maybe talk about some other time. But anyway,
okay.
The song that I would pick. So I nearly picked that one. Hard Rain Is Gonna Fall. But the song I'm going to go for, and there's not much to do with Bob Dylan for picking it really, but. You know, I was saying earlier on about how Bob Dylan's everywhere. You know, surprise, surprise, shock, horror. Nobody has ever said that before. So a couple of years ago, my son, we were going somewhere, and he stopped by in his car to pick me up, wherever it was we were going. And I got into his car, and we exchanged pleasantries, and then he takes off, and we're driving along. And he's got his phone playing a selection of songs, and the song that comes on pretty much just after we took off was a Bob Dylan song, and it was Don't Think Twice, It's All Right. And I said to him, I said, I sort of looked at it, I looked at the thing, and then I looked at him, and I said, what the fuck are you listening to this for? And he sort of said, it's Bob. And I said, so he would be about 29 or 28 at the time, you know. And I said, what how come you're listening to Bob Dylan? And he said to me, he says, Bob Dylan's great. And I went, yeah, but how have you found Bob Dylan? Like, you know, because when he was growing up, you know, I mean, he wasn't listening to Bob Dylan in my house, that's for sure. And he said, you know, just said he loves them. And what was interesting for me was, it's the real. Later on in a conversation, I played him the Byrds version of Mr. Tambourine Man, which he'd never heard before.
Hadn't he?
He never heard it before, and he hated it. He absolutely detested it because he preferred the original, the best version, he said. And and so anyway, we're coming back to Don't Think Twice, It's All Right. We were sitting in the car, and he knew every single word, and he knew the nuance and the pitching and the timing of it. And he sang the whole thing. He was singing along with Bob Dylan as we were driving to wherever it was we were going. And so when I heard the album for the first time in sequence, and I think it begins side 2, as you said earlier, and I put that on, and I was immediately, you know, thought of being in the car with my son.
Yeah, back in the car. And
my son listening to Bob Dylan and knowing it and preferring the earlier stuff to later stuff, perhaps, etc., etc. So that's the song I'm going for, shamelessly, because because of a connection with me son.
That's fine.
Yeah,
and it also is an absolutely classic song. So
it really is. The other song, just briefly before we go, the Bob Dylan blues song, Bob Dylan's Dream. Sorry. I knew that as Lord Franklin from.
Yeah, it is that tune, isn't it?
Yeah, and of course, I think the last time we met, we were talking about North Country, and of course he does do that version on this album, and I really like that tune from Roy Harper, as I say. So I could have picked any of those, I suppose, but Don't Think Twice, It's All Right is the one that I've got to go for. So there we are.
Okay, well, go from the North Country. He was taught that by Martin Carthy, and he got his permission to use that arrangement for his lyric.
Yeah.
Whereas around the same time, Paul Simon was taught that by Martin Carthy, the Scarborough Fair, and just nicked it without permission. And that and they're now made up, but that was the story behind those two songs.
I would urge anyone who hasn't heard it, the Roy Harper version of North Country is just drop dead beautiful, and it contains an absolutely gorgeous string arrangement by
David Bedford,
by the late great David Bedford, and it's beautiful. It is absolutely beautiful. But anyway, there we are. Okay. Well, what's next in the series? Well,
we're going back in time again next time for the very first album. This is the album that made Bob Dylan. The first album, as we've heard, nearly broke him before it even started.
Right.
And that's what we'll be doing next time.